Imagine a man, modern man, sneakers, cotton t-shirt. He's dropped onto a cattle trail in the 1880s. Thorns tear straight through his jeans. Dust fills his lungs. The sun beats down, and there is no shade, no brim, nothing between his skin and the burning sky. He can't grip the horse because his shoes slip through the stirrups. He can't protect his hands from the rope. Within an hour, he is bleeding, dehydrated, and losing the fight. Before cowboy clothes became a fashion statement, they were a survival system you wore on your body. Every piece existed because the trail demanded it. The brush demanded it. The rope demanded it. And if you didn't wear the right item, the environment punished you immediately. The question this investigation opens is simple. Why did each piece of cowboy clothing actually exist before Hollywood turned it into costume? And beneath that, two specific questions. First, which famous cowboy item was the real unsung hero, the piece that saved more lives and solved more problems than any other? Second, which item that we all picture as essential cowboy gear mattered far less than the movies made us believe? We're going to answer those questions with evidence, not nostalgia. We're going to rebuild the man from scratch, one functional layer at a time. We start with the smallest piece of cloth, the bandana. If you look at any Western film, the bandana is just a splash of color around the neck. Decoration. But the National Park Service classroom materials on cowboy clothing tell a different story. The bandana was the working cowboy's multi-tool. In a dust storm, you pulled it over your nose and mouth. It became a respirator decades before respirators existed. On a dry ride, you soaked it in a creek and held it over your face to cool your blood. If you were wounded, you tied it as a tourniquet or a pressure bandage. It filtered debris from water you scooped from a hoof print. It wiped sweat from your eyes so you could keep the hurt in sight. It protected your neck from sunburn and the back of your neck from rain dripping off your hat brim. A single square of cotton or silk, roughly 30 inches by 30 inches, was a portable survival kit disguised as a neckerchief. The vaqueros, the original Mexican and Spanish cowboys, carried the bandana long before it became a Hollywood accessory. The word itself comes from the Hindi bannu, a tie-dye cloth, brought to the Americas through trade routes. By the time the great cattle drives pushed north, the bandana was non-negotiable gear. Lose your bandana, you lost your dust mask, your water filter, and your emergency bandage all at once. But the bandana only protected the face and neck. The rest of the body faced a much more direct assault. From brush, from rope, from the simple act of riding through a landscape that was built to cut you open. That brings us to the chaps. The name comes from the Spanish chaparreras, which derives from chaparro, meaning scrub oak or dense thicket. The etymology alone tells you everything. Chaps were not decorative. They were armor against the chaparral. Picture a cowboy riding through a mesquite thicket. The branches are like barbed wire. Without protection, they'd shred his trousers and the skin beneath in minutes. The leather of the chaps deflected those thorns. They also absorbed the friction of a rope when a calf was dragged or held. If you've ever seen a cowhand snub a rope around his leg to control a steer, you understand why the leg covering was crucial. That rope can burn through denim in seconds. The chaps took the heat and the abrasion. The Buffalo Bill Center of the West houses original working chaps, including woolly chaps used on the northern plains. Those weren't for style. Woolly chaps, made from sheepskin with the wool left on, turned the legs into insulated pillars against blizzards and sub-zero wind. A cowboy driving cattle through a Montana winter without woolly chaps risked frostbite and hypothermia. The leather alone wouldn't cut it, so the chaps adapted. Regional variation, problem-specific design. This was not a uniform. It was a functional response to a local threat, but the hands needed protection too. Gauntlets, thick leather gloves with extended cuffs, shielded the wrists and forearms from rope burns and thorny branches before the rope could reach the skin. Now, below the chaps, the boots held their own secret. A secret that Hollywood completely misunderstood. Most people look at a cowboy boot and see the high heel as a fashion choice. something to make the wearer taller, something fancy. That is exactly backward. The heel was a safety feature. When you're riding, your foot rests in the stirrup. If the heel is flat, the foot can slide straight through. And if the rider falls while the foot is through the stirrup, he gets dragged. That killed men. The high, underslung heel caught on the stirrup bar and prevented the foot from passing all the way through. It was a mechanical lock. The pointed toe wasn't for dancing. It let the rider find the stirrup quickly without looking, especially when mounting a moving horse in a hurry. The tall shaft of the boot, often 12 to 16 inches high, protected the lower leg from chafing against the stirrup leathers and from the same brush that the chaps guarded. Inside, most working boots had no laces. Laces could catch on brush or stirrups. They had a smooth leather sole that allowed a quick dismount, sliding out of the stirrup without catching. According to the National Park Service's historical documentation on cowboy equipment, these features were standard because they worked. Lives depended on them. Then we come to the item that sits on top of the whole system, the hat. Everyone assumes the cowboy hat was for shade. Yes, obviously. The wide brim kept the sun off the face, the neck, the ears, areas that burn fast at high altitude or on the open plains. But the hat did much more. The shape of the crown and brim shed rain like a portable roof. In a downpour, water ran off the brim and away from the body, keeping the rider's head and shoulders relatively dry. You could take the hat off and fan a struggling campfire. You could wave it to signal another rider across a valley. In desperate circumstances, you could even use it to carry water for your horse, though that would ruin a felt hat quickly. But the point is, it was a tool before it was a symbol. The iconic crease, the Montana peak, or the pinch front wasn't standardized in the early days. Buffalo Bill Center of the West archives show early cowboy hats borrowed from whatever was available. Bowler shapes, plantation hats, military styles, modified sombreros. The vaquero influence here is undeniable. The high-crowned, wide-brimmed sombrero was the direct ancestor. As American cowboys adopted and adapted it, the hat became a regional signal. You could tell where a man worked by the way he shaped his hat. But function always came first. The brim you chose, the pitch, the material, it all answered the specific weather and work of your range. So now we have the full system. Bandana, chaps, boots, hat. Each piece solved a specific, brutal problem. The clothing was a wearable toolkit. But the two open questions remain. Which single item was the true unsung hero of the working cowboy's life? And which item that Hollywood sold you as essential was mostly for show? Let's take the Hollywood question first. When you picture a movie cowboy, you hear spurs jingling. Vague, ornate rowels that spin and sparkle. The jingle bob spur is practically a sound effect. But in reality, working cowboys used spurs sparingly, and they were far simpler tools. The spur was a cue, not a weapon. A small, functional spur with a mild rowel gave the horse subtle signals. The exaggerated, heavily decorated spurs with dangling jingle bobs were showpieces. Rodeo performers sometimes used them for effect, but a cowhand working cattle all day didn't want something that caught on brush, tangled in his gear, or made noise that spooked a restless herd. Historical collections at the Buffalo Bill Center confirm that most working spurs in their collection are relatively modest. The jingle bob is largely a Hollywood invention, amplified by costume designers who wanted visual and audio flair. Another candidate is the low-slung gun belt tied down on the thigh. In the movies, the gunslinger wears his holster far below the hip for a fast draw. In practice, a working cowboy spent far more time mending fence and sorting stock than shooting. He wanted his pistol secure and out of the way, not swinging around his knee. He often didn't even carry a sidearm unless there was a specific threat. The image you know is mostly performance. And the most practical item, the unsung hero, it's the bandana. Consider the evidence. The chaps protected from brush, but you could avoid heavy brush or ride more slowly. The boots saved lives if you fell, but you could ride in other footwear if you were careful. The hat provided shade and rain protection, but you could survive a sunburn or use your shirt for shade. But the bandana did things no other piece could replicate. It guarded your lungs against dust that could cause long-term respiratory damage. Cowboys called it dust pneumonia, and it killed. It stopped a bleeding wound when medical help was hours or days away. It filtered water when every drop mattered. It was on your body at all times, ready for any of these emergencies. The NPS classroom materials, on practical reasons for cowboy clothing, consistently highlight the bandana's unmatched versatility. No other single item in the Cowboys kit covered so many critical functions in a tiny, lightweight form. It was the piece you never left camp without, and that's the reframe. Before cowboy clothes became a fashion statement, they were an interface, a survival system you wore. Each item was an answer to a specific physical threat. The system was not designed by stylists. It was designed by thorns, rope, dust, sun, cold, and the mechanics of the horse. Nature was the designer. The cowboy was the wearer. Now rewind to the start. Take that same modern man. Give him a bandana. Give him chaps. Give him boots with the correct heel. Put the right hat on his head. Suddenly, he's not a victim of the environment anymore. He's moving through it. The brush scrapes off the leather, and he doesn't feel it. The dust rolls over his bandana barrier, and he draws clean breath. His heel locks the stirrup, and the horse and rider work as one unit. The trail is the same trail. The world is just as harsh, but the clothing system turns an exposed body into a protected operator. It was never fashion. It was a wearable toolkit. And the piece that held the whole case together, from the lungs to the blood, from the water to the eyes, was the one that looked the most ordinary. A square of cloth tied around the neck. That was the cowboy's true multi-tool. And the jingling spur you hear in every Western, that was mostly just noise.